Advice is something that you seek when you know the answer and you wish you didn't. I said enjoy it, but also just smile. Took a step back and sort of thought that I will get there, hopefully, but I believed in myself that I would get there. Worldwide domination. Yeah, no, ever since I was young, I always wanted to run my own thing because I believe in what I do and I enjoy it. I think that's the whole thing, it's finding the passion. I think that's where the drive and enthusiasm has come from.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you introduce yourself, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Rob Shotton. I am one of the co-founders of LooseHeads.
What is LooseHeads?
So LooseHeads is a rugby mental health charity. We're on a mission to place a mental health lead into every rugby club in the world. Quite a bonkers mission, but in the same breath it should be something that's quite simple. If you think every rugby club has a physio, a first team coach, a fixture secretary, why can't they have a mental health lead as well? So we're on that mission to put mental health on the map at rugby clubs and tackle the stigma, start conversations, break down the stigma. We currently work with 600 rugby clubs around the world, so there's quite a lot in the UK, but also further afield. When we sort of started this whole journey, we made it sort of a UK-based mission, but actually quite quickly we realised that there was a demand and an appetite for this worldwide. So rugby-loving English-speaking nations, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, America, Canada. We give access to those rugby clubs, the 600 that we're working with. We give them access to a toolkit. So that's a toolkit of free resources that puts mental health on the map, like I said before, starts conversations, promotes positive mental fitness. So when we first started this, we realised quite quickly that because we aren't the experts, we can't get into the cure space. So what we do is we work within what we call the LooseHead square, which is prevent, promote, educate, signpost. There are 4 key pillars, and that's how we work with clubs to hopefully break down the stigma and save lives along the way and change people's lives for the better.
So why did you start LooseHeads?
Yeah, I take you back sort of, it was a conversation at the end of a bar with myself, my dad, and a good friend, Dave. And the 3 of us were watching the Lions tour of New Zealand, talking about our rugby stories, our rugby journeys. All good rugby stories start in the bar, don't they? And this one does as well. But talking about our rugby stories like you do. And we'd all had mates that had it wasn't about the rugby stories, it was about the people that we met along the way. And we'd all had mates that had what we described back then as a little bit of a life wobble. We felt as mates we couldn't do anything positive for those mates other than say that typical bloke thing of, do you fancy another beer, mate? Which just does not help. It paints over the cracks, and that impotence drove us to form what is now LooseHeads. It was a germ of an idea back then. We definitely, sort of fast forward 5.5 years, we definitely didn't think that it would be a full-time job, but that's what it is now. Like I said before, we realised quite quickly that when we first started this, we can't get into the cure space, so what we do is we work on that prevent, promote, educate, signpost square. The other thing that we realised is that nobody wants to talk about mental health. It's just the world that we live in. You know, people hear that term and they run a mile. So what we try and do is, at LooseHeads, what we try and do is we are changing the dialogue to talk about mental fitness. But also what we're doing is we're using rugby as that vehicle to drive and open up the conversation around mental health. And we try and keep everything that we do quite fun and engaging. But I think, coming back to why it all started, I know I've got a couple of mates that I know that had that sort of life wobble, and I felt like I couldn't do anything for that person to help them. I never ever knew what to say. And just that, and using rugby's that sport that has the togetherness, the camaraderie, the clubhouse feel. You walk into any clubhouse in the world, you've instantly got 40 new mates. We wanted to use that community to do something positive and special within the the mental health space to start those conversations. So what I want to do is give people the tools to be able to just start those conversations with their mates, because it's something that I couldn't do. Ever since I was young, I always wanted to run my own thing. I never knew what that would be. I definitely didn't think it would be a mental health charity, but I always wanted to do my own thing. I always wanted to work for myself and be in control of my own destiny. Yeah, I think the motivation, it's been tough over the last sort of 5.5 years. So when we first started, it's been a steep learning curve. We know rugby, we've always known rugby, it's our sport, but pairing that with mental health, mental fitness, it has been a steep learning curve. Still learning now. Don't know all the answers, but you know, hopefully getting towards that. But I think over the last sort of, like I said, 5.5 years it's only been 5 years. It's been evenings and weekends, and that's been tough. But because I believe in what I do and I enjoy it, I think that's the whole thing. It's finding the passion. I think that's where the drive and enthusiasm has come from.
So is LooseHeads just a charity?
So it's a limited company and a charity. So the limited company is where we do the clothing, and the profits of the clothing go into 100% of the profits go into the LooseHeads Foundation, which is the registered charity, and that's where we do the good stuff. So that's where we work with the rugby clubs. That's where our mission is to place a mental health lead into every rugby club. So yeah, both, and we're not afraid to say that we're both. I think quite a lot of people are afraid to say that they're both, and we're not, because why would we? But yeah, genuinely, you know, it's the best thing. It's the best thing I do. We never wanted to be a halfway house. We wanted to be a fully blown charity.
And how comes the clothing? That was the...
Yeah, so the clothing, when we first started, like I said before, it was that steep learning curve, and we thought, how do we get this message out there rather than just us on social media or just shouting about it word of mouth? And it was make, we hope, trendy clothing that people want to wear. The other thing there is that we've made clothing that we hope people like, and actually we've got quite a high returning customer rate, which shows that people do like the stuff, which is quite nice. And we always wanted it to be, we didn't want it to be a charity t-shirt that people wear once, they feel good about it, they put it at the bottom of their drawer and they'll throw it away the next time they see it. We wanted it to be something that, we say, wear the post with pride. And we want people to put this on and feel part of that community, something that one of our values is the importance of community. I think that's very important in rugby, but also when you're trying to do good in the mental health space, it's not about us, it's about us as in the wider sense and the community. So we wanted people to wear the stash, feel proud of wearing the stash, but also it's a conversation starter. If you're into rugby and you see the posts like that, it's going to start a conversation, we hope. And you know, the first time that I saw someone wearing it that I didn't know it blew me away. I was like, wow. It was an incredible moment, and I was actually walking down the harbour in Bristol, and I saw someone. It was a coat wearing, you know, the LooseHeads post with pride, and I was walking with my mate, and they said, "Go on, you have to go and speak to them. You have to." And I was like, I got a bit nervous. I was like, I actually cannot. But it was quite emotional actually. And then since then, I've seen probably. At rugby games, I've seen quite a bit, and rugby festivals, there's been quite a lot of it. But it's a conversation starter, and it's being part, you know, you put this t-shirt on and you feel part of something bigger than yourself, and you feel part of a community. We've got 16,000 customers worldwide, the last time I checked, which was a couple of months ago, so more than that probably now. But yeah, 16,000 customers worldwide wearing the post with pride is just absolutely phenomenal. The next thing for me is if people are wearing it, I will go up and approach them and say, do you know the story about LooseHeads? Maybe I won't, but you know, I know that a couple of my mates have done that, which is quite nice, and people have sort of relayed the story back to them, which is again quite emotional. But yeah, it's amazing to see that it's grown in this country, and people who are aware of rugby, we think are sort of aware of LooseHeads as well, but it's bridging that gap now from they might know who they might know these posts and know what LooseHeads is, but it's bridging the gap from who we are to what we do and how people get involved. So that's a big project of ours at the moment, is to bridge that gap.
And when did you start the project of LooseHeads?
2017, and it was the Lions Tour of New Zealand, the final test, when we were having a beer at 8 a.m. because it was in New Zealand. That's where, 2017, that's where it started. But I said it before, being typical blokes, we probably spent that year after that initial conversation not really doing a lot, because day jobs got in the way a little bit. But again, steep learning curve of mental health and mental fitness. But the conversation kept coming back. It was people that we knew that were telling us, but also the people that we didn't know, which was probably quite a important catalyst for then just stepping into it and saying, right. And it was Dave actually that approached the other two of us and just sort of grabbed us and said, look, we need to do something here. And I think that the big thing there is that there were more suicides happening as well, which is just horrible and it should not be happening. And we just thought, we need to have a look at what's going on in this world of mental fitness, and using rugby and sport as a way of starting that conversation. So the more we did a little bit of research into that, we realised that there wasn't a lot going on. So we said to ourselves, right, we need to be the people that step in here and tackle the stigma and save people's lives, hopefully. It feels like so long ago now. And in terms of the clothing, just to start on that, we've still got a bag full of mistakes in my dad's garage up north, and they will never see daylight because they are horrific. So it's all about getting it wrong to get it right, I think. The clothing, we sort of got it right, and we've tried to keep it quite simple, so the black and the white. And then first steps with the sort of foundation and the charity side of things, it was building that toolkit so that it was something that is needed within the rugby community. So what we've done is we've gone to rugby clubs and our contacts in the rugby world. It's not about us building something that we think needs to be around. It's us finding out, making sure that what we're doing and what we're creating is going to help the rugby community, and it's what they want and it's what they need. So that was a big one for us. So one of the projects that we worked on was a mental health training module with Mental Health Foundation. So every LooseHead, every mental health lead that sort of signs up with their club, we suggest that they undertake that training. So it's a 45-minute module, and it gives that person the education and equips them with the tools and the right resources to be able to go and do more good stuff within that rugby club. So we knew that to build that, we had to go out and find out from rugby clubs what the topics are that need to be discussed and addressed. So I think it's listening to people. I think that's probably the main thing. It's listening to what your audience and what your community want and need, and I think that's what we got. Once we started doing that, we started to get a little bit more right, and it's again goes for the clothing as well. Once we listen to what people want and what they like the look of and what they want to wear, I think that's where we started to get a lot more right. It's listening to people, isn't it? Yeah.
With the audience and the community that you said that you spoke to,
yeah.
Did you have to build that first, or did you already have access to that community?
We built it from scratch ourselves, which is, we're completely blown away by the support that we've had in the rugby community. So we've now got probably over 80,000 people following us across social media, which is the online community, and then we've got a community of 600 rugby clubs that we work with around the world. So quite a big community that believe in what we do. But I think what helped in initially building that community was having one focus on this is rugby. So it's rugby's mental health charity. It's not, we go and get involved in, and we're not saying that we will never get involved in this, but not get involved straight away in hockey and football and lacrosse and water polo and sailing, because we have been, contacted by those clubs, and we've said you can have access to our toolkit. But what we've been very clear on is we are rugby, and we are rugby and mental health, and that's finding that sort of niche. So I think that's how we were able to build up that community quite quickly, because people understood what we were trying to do. They enjoyed the content and everything that we were promoting. And then the next big thing that we did that probably supported us in growing that community was we got ambassadors on board. So we've got four. So we've got the ambassadors, which are what we call the top flight rugby players. So people that give us the shout us out and wear the post with pride and give us that brand exposure and brand visibility, and that helps us. If Manu Tuilagi is talking about Looseheads, people listen to Manu Tuilagi more than they'll listen to us, because he is a high-profile rugby player, and he's someone that's good to have on your side rather than against you. The second one is we have the academy, which is, we set that up a month before COVID, which is 100 sort of raving fans, big supporters of Looseheads, and they found Looseheads, and there's a WhatsApp chat that sometimes gets out of hand because it's all that rugby banter stuff, but that community, I've spoken to a couple of them, and they said that group actually saved them during lockdown. So the actual, the ambassadors, the academy, so that's our sort of voice and sort of our voice in the grassroots game. And then we have a mental health panel. So the mental health panel is, I said it before, but we aren't the experts. So what we need to do is we need to partner with people who are experts and give us direction in the whole world of mental health and mental fitness. And then we have the rugby advisory panel. Whilst we might think we are the experts in rugby, we aren't, again, and we need help and guidance. So we have I call it a rugby royalty panel, but they definitely don't want to be called that themselves. But people, high profile people who have been in rugby and give us that direction. So the ambassadors, the academy, and the two panels are really vital for growing that community. And it's having people on your side that believe in what you do and support it with everything that wherever they can. So that was vital in terms of building that community.
I think you're almost at 40,000 followers on Instagram, right?
35.9k.
Yeah. So how did you get your first 100? What was what did you do to get the ball rolling?
Good shout.
And maybe also the first 1,000?
I think it's consistency. It's a thing that I've learned over the last few years as well, is just that if you want to get your message out there, you need to be consistent with that message. And I think what we did is everything that we promoted was rugby and quite fun, but also it has that message around mental health and mental fitness, and it will always come back to that. And I think that the first 100, we actually celebrated quite a bit when we hit. We were like 10 followers. Yes, we've got 10 followers, just our friends and family. Mum, follow, please, follow. And then we got to 500 and 1,000, and we were like, that sort of picked up quite quickly, and then it slowed down. And then we quite quickly in lockdown, we went from 5,000 to 10,000, pretty much, not overnight, but within a couple of weeks. And it was genuinely the consistency, because I was on furlough from my real job at that time. And it meant that I could take a step away and focus more on Looseheads, and that allowed us to focus. I run the social media account, so it allowed me to get in touch with rugby players. It allowed me for giving us a bit of a shout out and sort of wearing the t-shirt and just sort of spreading our message. But yeah, I think it was just in answer to your question, it's just consistency. I think that's the most important thing in terms of growing that community, but it's also sticking true to your message, and sticking true to your values as well. We've got 4 values at LooseHeads, and sticking true to those 4 values, and it means that you're not jumping on any bandwagon, and people see you as authentic and then follow you and be a part of that community.
What's the best thing you've experienced since starting this journey? What have been some of the highs? Yeah,
I know that answer straight away. However, we've had loads of good days, loads of bad days, but I think a few of the good days are actually spent with you, actually, with some of the filming days that we've had, and so we've had so many pinch yourself moments at LooseHeads, and when we're doing like filming at Twickenham like that as a rugby fan, but then and people are wearing the LooseHead stash, it's like, am I dreaming here? Is this real? But 2 things stand out. So one of those is, I'll leave the best one till last because we always do that. The first one was during lockdown. I got a call from Craig Doyle, and I didn't have his number, so I answered it, and I was like, I recognise that voice. Face and voice of BT Sport ringing me up and just saying, Rob, can you might know me from the TV, but can you just tell me a little bit about LooseHeads? I've come to find out a little bit more, but I want to hear it from you. So I told him the LooseHead story, and he just said, it sort of went silent for like 2 or 3 seconds, and then he went, I really think you're onto something there. And that was just just like a tick sort of appeared in my head. It was like, wow, we are onto something. Because there's days where, before going full time, where you'd be thinking, is it ever going to become a full-time job? I've got so much passion to give in this area, but I don't want that passion to be lost if it doesn't become a full-time job. So to hear that and get that comment from Craig was just incredible. The second one was just after lockdown, we had a message from a guy who's now in our LooseHeads Academy, and so take it back a little bit further. When we sat down, the 3 of us, to do a business plan, so we have a 1-year goal, a 3-year goal, and a 10-year goal, and then it was either the 3 or the 10-year goal. We had a bit of a laugh with our last one and said, we hope that someone not coerced by us would get a LooseHeads tattoo. And it wasn't one of us 3 as well. And this guy, just after lockdown, got in touch with us, and he said, I was playing rugby and I quit because anxiety got the better of me, but I found LooseHeads. I felt part of something. I felt like I was part of this community, and all of your ideas, all of your posts, all of your content got me into thinking rugby will support my mental health, my mental fitness. So after lockdown, when clubs were getting back up and running, he went down to his local rugby club, and he then he loved it, and he joined in, and he found a few new friends, and he did, he was feeling in a much better place, and he messaged us and said, I've got a LooseHeads tattoo next to my watch strap to remind me that it's okay not to be okay on the bad days, and just thank you. And we just went away and thought, wow, that is, it's not us. He's gone and done it himself. He's gone to the rugby club, and he's mixed with that rugby community and family. But amazing. And then 2 weeks later, his girlfriend messaged us and said, my boyfriend had just been in touch. He's the one who's got the LooseHeads tattoo next to his watch strap, and I just wanted to say thank you. You've saved his life. And it just hit us somewhere about here, because we were like, no, it just goes to show that if we often said, when we first started this, we said that if we can just help one person, then that's a win. It's not about winning, it's about changing people's lives for the better. And with what we do, it's really difficult to manage success or what is a win, because our whole thing is, if we're putting mental health leads into rugby clubs, then yeah, that's brilliant. But it's really hard to manage look at what success is. But that is 100% a success story, and hopefully there's a lot more to come. Hopefully.
Showing reality, showing the real world of being an entrepreneur on your own. You've got a great team around you, but could you talk about some of the hardest moments you've had to go through with running LooseHeads?
Yeah, I think probably the main one is I had a different job, and I had to focus on that whilst doing LooseHeads on the side, and it was evenings, weekends. Obviously the passion was there. I always believed that LooseHeads would become a full-time job eventually. It was just very difficult to stay motivated when that end goal wasn't in sight. So they were probably the most difficult, still got difficult days now because there's so much going on. We're always bonkers busy. I think it comes down to three things. I think it's time. There's only two of us that are full-time. There's three of us, but there's only two of us full-time. It's that consistency, and I think that actually helps now that we're full-time, but it's the time, the consistency, and then it's the financial security is always something that people probably don't talk about enough, because when they run their own thing, they want people to think that it's going really well. So they're never going to say, oh, we're struggling at the moment for financially. And one of the big difficulties for us has been in the last sort of 9 to 12 months, we've been seeking corporate sponsorship and funding. And I'm completely I know that we will get there, but there's been days where it's like, will we ever get there? Yeah, that just doesn't get talked about. Maybe it does, I just haven't seen it, but it is interesting because when you run your own business, you want everyone to think that it's going well. So no one really talks about that whole financial. So financial side, but also the fact that just now it's a full-time job. That's amazing, and I'm loving every day of it. But before, when it wasn't a full-time job, I think they were the toughest days where. So just to give context to that, so I worked for Bristol Sport doing 3 days a week, and I was doing 2 days a week for LooseHeads. And so Bristol Sport, I worked Monday, this is mad, it was only 5 months ago and I can't remember, but Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and I worked Wednesday, Friday, LooseHeads. And to jump in and out of different projects and two completely different organisations was so difficult to stay motivated in both. So I think they're sort of the main challenges, but hopefully now full-time, and there's a couple of amazing partners that are about to come on board. Hopefully there's always going to be challenges, but hopefully the ones that I've just mentioned will be quiet for a little bit.
So you said stay motivated.
Yeah.
What did you do to stay motivated?
I think because what I said before about having, I was so passionate about doing something where I'm in control of the destiny. So I always wanted that, and when it became sort of realistic that LooseHeads could potentially become a full-time job, I was so focused on getting to that point. But at the same time, I heard this on a Lando Norris podcast, and Lando Norris said, so he does quite well, very well, but he's never won a Grand Prix. So what he says is that it's important not to get too obsessed with the end goal and to fall in love with the journey. And that's something that really, really stuck with me, because if you get too obsessed with the end goal, if you never get there, then you're going to be demotivated. And if you get there, you're going to be demotivated because you've done it and you've ticked it off. So it's really important to fall in love with the whole journey of what we're doing with LooseHeads, and that whole mission of getting into it's a bonkers mission. It is a bonkers mission, but So there's 18,000 rugby clubs in the world. We're currently working with 600. That is so small compared to, but we're not obsessed with working with those 18,000. We would love to, but we're not obsessed with it because it's all about that whole journey. And I think that's also something that I thought about when going full-time with LooseHeads. I was kind of obsessed with it because it was something that I was very passionate about, but at the same time I sort of took a step back and sort of thought that I will get there, hopefully, but I believed in myself that I would get there, so just not to become obsessed with that, really.
So do you have a network of people you can tap into for help advice when it comes to the entrepreneurial experience and the challenges that you face? Or are you on your own?
Yeah, good question. Do you know what? You sent that question through and I looked at it and I had a bit of a think about that one, and I don't actually know. Like my dad, who does LooseHeads, and Dave, obviously I speak to them all the time. And I think the relationship I have with my dad, he's my dad, but also I've working on LooseHeads with him. And I think that there is a bit of a difference. So I'd go to my dad for that sort of advice. He will always come back and say, advice is something that you seek when you already know the answer, but you wish you didn't. And I sort of agree with that, but at the same time, I look for that advice from him anyway. There are a couple of other people that I wouldn't say I look for advice and guidance from them, but they take a real interest in what LooseHeads is and the whole journey and story of it. And I speak to them now and again. So I wouldn't say that I have that sort of person in business that I go to for helping, but I wish I did, actually.
What's next for you and LooseHeads?
Worldwide domination. No. What's next for LooseHeads? Now it's a full-time job. It's allowing us to, that has allowed us to do a lot more in that space of time, the 5 months. It's been bonkers busy. I keep saying that phrase, bonkers busy, but it has been bonkers busy. But it's been enjoyable. So I am really excited for the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 90 days. Something that we sort of talk about. But I think the next step for us is to have feet on the ground at rugby clubs, which is very difficult for the two of us that are full-time, but being like visible and doing stuff with feet on the ground at rugby clubs is important, especially through that whole importance of community. And it's also, the next step is to go into like the different countries. So I mentioned them before, but Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, America, Canada. So America and Canada, actually, interestingly, we've just become the official mental fitness partner to the MLR. So that's a big one for us. We want to build on, taking those 600 rugby clubs to 1,000, and then once we get to 1,000, we'll go to 2,000, 3,000. So it's like the followers on Instagram. We celebrated when we had 500 rugby clubs on board, which was a few months ago. It's now building on that, but also I think what's quite important about that whole community of rugby clubs is we want to be able to talk to those people, listen to them, like I said before, but also we want them to talk to each other. So worldwide, we want LooseHeads, mental health leads, talking to each other to share their knowledge, their experience of what works and what's helped their rugby club, and how they've started those conversations around mental health, mental fitness, and hopefully we're using that whole rugby community to do some good.
Do you have any advice for anyone wanting to start their journey into starting their own business, their brand, and the most important one, or pursuing their dream?
Yeah. No, I'm joking. No, I'm joking. Can you swear on this?
Yeah.
So JFDI, which is one of the things that we say at LooseHeads all the time, which is just fucking do it. And I think that's so important. If you believe in something, just fucking do it. I think the other thing is find your passion. I think that's probably harder than it sounds, but I always knew I wanted to get into sport. So I've found opportunities that allowed me to get into the world of sport. And then it was only when I got into sport and had various jobs in sport that I then found LooseHeads being that next step and that passion. And so I think that's probably the first one. It's JFDI. It's just do it. And I know that's Nike, but so I've added the F in there. The second one is obviously find your passion, and it's harder than it seems. The third one is enjoy it. I think I said it before, but it's all about that journey. And I feel like actually, if you find your passion, you will enjoy it anyway. But enjoy it. Enjoy the hard times and enjoy the good times. Again, this is actually quite a weird rugby analogy that's come from my dad. Interestingly, talking about my dad again, but he always said, so he coached me at rugby, and when you were playing on the November, December horrible days, he said, you're not playing, basically you want to earn your day in the sun. So what that means is the cup final, or when you might win the league, is in May. So you play these games to earn your day in the sun. So that whole piece around enjoy the tough times, enjoy the bad times, because you're earning that day in the sun. And the fourth of, I don't know how many I've said there, but the final one is, I said enjoy it, but also just smile. I think that's such a big thing. Like just smile, enjoy it and smile.
If you could go back and do anything differently, would you?
Apart from that bag of mistakes that we have in my dad's garage, no, I don't think so, because maybe if we did something differently, then it wouldn't be a full-time job. But no, I think one of our values, I said it before, we've got 4 values. One of them is business unusual, and what that means is always do the right thing. Who thought it would be a good idea to start a business to give away money? It just doesn't make sense. Business unusual. But I think that's meant that there's been, not a lot, but there's been a couple of times where we've sort of said, no, we can't do that because we're always doing the right thing. So, no, I don't think so. I don't think I'd change anything.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Rob.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey.
Oh, you want me to walk off? Do you want me to?